Welcome to Church at Home with Rachael for Friday, the 5th of August. It is good to see you, and I hope you're having a great day. Over the last week or so, I've been talking a lot about things like having a seat at the table and acknowledging our gifts and really being able to take a look at ourselves and appreciate who we are and what we have to offer. And I know that for many people, myself included, that can be a really difficult thing to do because we think, I'm just little old me. What have I got to offer? I'm just this small little cog in a giant machine. What could what could possibly be important about me? And then yesterday, I was reading a devotion from our Daily Bread, and it talks about something really interesting. I want to share this with you. It says, Dr. Gary Greenberg has magnified and photographed sand, like grains of sand, from beaches all around the world, often revealing surprising, vibrant splashes of color from the minerals, shell, and coral fragments contained within. He's discovered there's more to sand than meets the eye. In aeronology, the study of sand, the microscopic analysis of sand's mineral content can reveal much about erosion, shore currents, and their potential effects on coastlines. Even a little sand can yield information of great worth. I find that so incredible. When we hear in the Bible, God talking to Abraham about Abraham, who, remember, was married to Sarah, who was barren. Abraham had no children. He was heading for 100. Sarah was 90 years old. And he says to Abraham, don't worry, because you're going to have children. And your offspring are going to be so many, they'll be like the stars in the sky and the grains of sand on the beach. You think about it. When was the last time you went to the beach and maybe you were making a sandcastle or just walking and feeling your feet displacing the sand as you walked along it? There's billions of grains of sand, and every single one of them is different. And yet every single one of them is important to that beach. A beach that is ever changing. As the tide comes in, it shifts the sand. It brings more sand forward and pulls more sand back. The sand, the stones that have been ground down by the water and smoothed away, the sand, the grains of sand that have become what they are because of erosion and the weather and all of these things. Every single grain of sand is like a whole little microcosm in and of itself. Normally we just walk along, and if you're like me, you're like grumpy about getting sand between your toes. I'm not a big sand person. But if we broke it down and thought about it, sit down in the sand and play with it and feel it, how when it's wet it feels cold and kind of cakey, and when it's dry, when it's hot it feels dry, and sometimes it almost feels silky. At the same time, it can feel very hard. Like when you've got calluses on your feet, walking on the beach can really wear down those calluses. That sand has so many properties to it, so many aspects of it that are unique to each grain of sand. And you and I are like each grain of sand. Like snowflakes and raindrops. There isn't one other snowflake or raindrop like that one. There isn't one other person identical to you. Even twins, when they share DNA, identical twins, there's something different about each person. Maybe they're under a microscope. They look like they might be the same, but get to know them. I remember when I was in public school in grade 7 and 8, we had Stuart and Steve. They were identical twins. They weren't so identical that you couldn't tell them apart once you got to know them. But these two were like night and day. And that's what helped, because Steve was outgoing and athletic, and he was like gregarious, and he was super smart, and he was, nicest guy in the world. And his brother, Stuart, was equally smart and nicest guy in the world. Like they were kind of tied for that. But he was very shy, and he was very introverted, and he wasn't so great at sports, but he was good at other things. Both of them were incredibly talented individual people. And thank God the school thought enough to put them in different classrooms, so they weren't always competing with each other. But the fact is that Stuart and Steve, they were like these two incredible miracles that God had created. And everybody else might look at them and say, well, God doubled up. God did the same thing twice. But the fact was, he didn't. God created these two individual people who had different favorite colors, and they had different kinds of friends, and they liked different foods, and they had different experiences. Even though their lives were lived together and they went on the same family trips and they did all the same things, for the most part, they experienced different things because of the things they liked, their affinities, the things they didn't like. God created them to be completely unique. God created every grain of sand to be completely unique, to tell a story, to be able to contribute information about the history of the world, the erosion patterns and the weather and things like that. It's like when you cut open a tree, or my sister, I think this dendrochronology, I think that's what it's called. She went, when she was in university, she went coring. So you'd take a machine, almost like a drill, and you put it into the trunk of a tree. Here's the tree trunk, and you put it in this way. And it goes in and it pulls out a core. It doesn't damage the tree. The tree's okay. But it pulls out a core, and you can see the rings, and you can learn all of this stuff about the weather patterns from years ago. And what was it, a hot or dry summer? Was it wet? Was it freezing cold? All of these things. You can learn all these things from this little core sample from a tree. It's incredible. Think about if that is what Creator, the divine, science, however you think about how we and all of these things came into being, if that's what can be learned from a simple sample of a tree, or a single grain of sand, or a drop of water, and all of the particles that one drop of water or a snowflake holds, what story do our lives tell? Our lives may indeed tell the story of an introverted teenager who moved around a lot and felt highly uncomfortable in circumstances where she had trouble making new friends and felt like she was always trying to break into the clique. But the story, if you took the core of me, that story would also tell you of a young girl who learned to love reading and who loved to sit at her grandfather's knee and hear stories, who loved the idea of horseback riding since she only went about 4 times. The story of a girl who loved hockey and knew everything there was to know about it, and nobody cared, but that was okay because she loved hockey. The story of a girl who grew up believing that she could become a priest, that she could change people's lives because she could share the love of God with others. The story of a girl who loves her dog. A story of a girl who had a cold when she was 3, or had her adenoids removed, or had her tonsils out when she was 15. There's so many parts of a person that go into making the complexity of who they are. And when we look at each part of that, we shouldn't do so with judgment, with a value to say, well, that experience was bad and that experience was good. Because the fact is, some of the very experiences that I went through as a teenager, or even as a young adult, that I looked on at the time and thought, well, that was negative, that was a bad experience, that was painful. Those are the very things that helped me to become the person I am today, that have given me strength, have encouraged me to become compassionate, those are the things that have taught me what I like and what I don't like. Such important things to know. Just because at the time they felt like they were heavy and oppressive and difficult doesn't mean that they were inherently bad. We really shouldn't do that to ourselves. And people do it to us all the time. We should ignore that. But we need to learn to look at ourselves and not see that this is bad or this is good. We should be able to look at ourselves a little bit more scientifically, maybe like a grain of sand or that sample core from a tree, and look at that and say, what can I learn? This is who I am. good or bad, whatever the world thinks, whatever. Let's just like say, whatever the world thinks they think. Who cares? And look at ourselves and say, I am me. And because I am sitting here today, I am strong. What do my different layers speak of my experience? Who does my core say that I am? What does my DNA or my molecules or my piece of hair, skin cells, what could be learned? What if some scientists picked them up? What would they learn of who I am and my impact on the world or the world's impact on me? That is important because you are important. I believe in God, and I believe that God created each of us and said it is very good, exactly as we are. And when we can come to that place where we acknowledge who we are and not worry so much about what others think, whether they think we're okay or not, then we have a shot at really becoming the best of who we are called to be. God didn't make junk. God makes roses and lilies and robins and blue jays and peacocks. God makes manatees and dolphins and the great white sharks. God made puppies and kittens and baby elephants. God made the stars in the sky. God made the grains of sand on the beach. God made each of us. Don't ever let another tell you that you're just simply another grain of sand, because you can turn around and tell them that your grain of sand contains so much goodness, so much beauty, and so much information that is necessary and important to this world, that you are the most important grain of sand. Have a great weekend, and God bless you. I'll see you Sunday for Gospel on the Go and next Monday for Church at Home with Rachael. Have an incredible day and an even better weekend, and enjoy being your very spectacular, unique grain of sand.